You're listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast, the podcast where we delve deeper into landscape business, interviewing legends of the UK landscaping industry. So, join host Nick Ruddle as he explores their thoughts, insights and experiences. That's here on the Grow Landscapers podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Grow Landscapers podcast. I'm Nick Ruddle, and today I'm here with Marian Barker from Fresh Horticultural Careers. Hello, Marianne. How are you?
Hi, Nick. All good, thank you.
Marvellous. Thanks for appearing on our podcast. Much appreciated. Let's get started straight into the questions. I'm sure you've got lots of nuggets and words of wisdom to share. But let's just sort of go back to the beginning, really. And how long have you been in the industry, recruiting in the landscaping industry?
I've been in the recruitment industry for 35 years and recruiting for horticulture for 21 now.
Right, 21 years
Yes.
recruiting for landscapers. Very good,
Yes.
very good. So lots of nuggets to share with many people. So if we go back to the very early years, then 35 years ago, where did it all start?
I fell into recruitment by accident, as a lot of people do. My mum was a teacher. When I grew up, mum was a teacher, worked pretty much full time as I grew up, and dad ran his own business. I left university, went to university in York, left university looking for work, and went into a recruitment agency, and they said, what experience have you had? I said, I've been a barmaid, I've been a waitress. I said, I've worked for my dad's business. And they said, oh yeah, what did you do? So I said, well, I'd answer the phone in one office. And if somebody asked for the accounts department, I'll put the phone down in that office, run through to the next and pick up the phone and say accounts department speaking. So very quickly learnt that when you run your own business, you wear a lot of different hats. So on the basis of that story, this recruitment agency offered me a job, and the rest, they say, is history.
So whereabouts was that?
That was in Guildford.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in a place called Hazelmere in Surrey.
Oh, right. Okay. So that's where you were from then, that sort of Surrey, Guildford, Hazelmere area. Very good. And so schooling around that way, first jobs around that way, and the recruitment around that way.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So what made you go into business for yourself then? What was it that sort of made you think, right, well, I know what I'm doing. I like what I'm doing. Maybe working for someone else and maybe could do it better, or wanted to be in control and in control of your own destiny?
The combination of all those things. I worked in corporate recruitment, got made redundant in 1990. I worked mainly in the city, so high street recruitment, mainly for Reed. Made redundant in 90 and went to work for a couple of the other high streets and hated it. I'd been a regional manager when I left, when I was made redundant. So I was very much used to the sort of the management side and dealing with clients, and was very much my own boss. Reed were an excellent company to work for. I had a particular client who followed me wherever I went. So when I left one of the high street companies, she suggested that I go and work for an Australian guy, which I did. And I set up a secretarial division for him. And it was during this time that there were lots of Australians and New Zealanders coming into the office every now and then, and they'd be going out to work for companies like Clifton's, another client of mine who's still a client of mine, Turret Landscapes, and nobody seemed to be doing anything about it. And I made the suggestion that we actually took it and made a separate suggestion of it. And so that's what we did. So you started. And he left me to run the whole thing myself, absolutely everything. So, yeah.
So was that specialising in the landscaping area? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. The guy I worked for was an accountant, and he did accountancy type things. I came in and set up the secretarial division for him. And whilst I was doing that, I noticed that there was this, and I didn't really know, it was really the Antipodean connection that did it. So young Aussies and Kiwis over in London, and they either went into agricultural roles or they went into landscaping and horticulture. And I realised that obviously there was a market there. And so, so suggested that we actually looked at that, and it was massive. At one stage, it was massive. And then things changed there. And so when I left him 7 years later, I kind of thought, what do I do now? Went back into high street, hated every minute of it, and thought, right, why don't I go back and relaunch this, which is what we did.
Yeah, what was it that you hated about going back into high street specifically?
Very much everything was about targets, was about figures, and wasn't actually about people.
Yeah.
And having been out of the corporate market for a while, I'd forgotten the layers of not quite sure what the right word is, but the hierarchical nature of the business, and dealing with landscaping and horticulture with the clients that we were dealing with. It was straightforward, honest conversations, and just nicer people to deal with, to be honest.
Yeah, and recruitment is all about people, isn't it, really? And I think that's often the issues when you've got these big high street companies. It's so target driven, and making sure you make it hitting the profit, getting your break evens, because obviously every single bum on a chair needs to be making the money. So they're so focused on that. And sometimes I think it can take your eye off the ball in terms of what are we doing it for anyway? We're all about helping people find great jobs, helping people find great employees. It shouldn't be about the numbers, because if you do a great job, the byproduct is that you'll make the sales anyway, won't you? You know, if you focus on doing a great job, find the right people and genuinely matching great people with the right kind of job and right kind of company fit, then you're gonna hit your target. So that's nice that you didn't like that, and you wanted to focus more on the people. So at that point, then you went and set up Fresh Horticultural Careers.
Well, we were originally, as everybody who knows me will know, we were originally called Anders Plus, and literally in a warehouse storage building in Vauxhall, which no longer exists. It was pulled down. Sorry, Nick, bear with me. It was pulled down, and but when we went there, we borrowed the office off a friend of ours who'd actually been a client, and he did specialist removals. So we occupied the office during the day, and he was there at the weekends sometimes with a fax machine and a phone, and that was it, really.
That was it. And the yellow pages?
Something like that. I mean, it's we'd had very good relationships with some of them. Some of the they're still the big names in the industry, and literally, it was then as it is today to a certain extent. There's one similarity: if you get a CV, or if you get an individual in front of you with the right attitude and the right experience, you can find them work. And it's just and the art of it, if you like, is making sure is actually sort of understanding the chemistry of your clients and understanding what people fit with them. Yeah,
so I suppose it comes down to sort of shared values, isn't it? You've got to match the right people with the right sort of common values, the shared, like-minded companies, like-minded values. I think once you find the right people based on the right culture, it works. Otherwise there's a disconnect, isn't there? If you have people that don't share the same values as you, there's always going to be issues along the road. And I think that's one of the areas that we focus on, making sure that companies know what their values are, because then they can attract the right kind of people. I'm sure you sort of say the same thing to them, to your clients. Okay, good. So you started out from humble beginnings, in that office.
Very, very, very.
So what does it look like now then? So all these, fast forward 20 odd years later, what does it look like now?
In a sense, not dissimilar. I mean, I think one of the, sometimes you have to remember what you've achieved. And I think probably one of the achievements is surviving. Probably not dissimilar in terms of numbers of people that work with us. We have a small office. We're based in Kennington in South London now, because throughout throughout the whole period of time. We've stayed in South London because in the end, what's happened is I've recruited people to work with me who live within that area.
Yeah.
So we're in Kennington now in a small office, but obviously pandemic and everything, not so much face-to-face, lots of this, lots of Zoom, lots of team meeting, and we FaceTime a lot of candidates now. The biggest difference now really is we're not dealing with the numbers that we were dealing, particularly on the temp side, sort of prior to global meltdown, if you like, in 2010, and changes in visa regulations. We were running probably between around about 150 temporary staff a week, plus and less on the permanent placement side. So it's quite different in terms of the balance of the business.
Yeah, you do both sides, temps and perms. But yeah, temps can be very time consuming though, can't they? You know, perms in one way much easier. But the temps give you the nice bread and butter and helps people out short term. Good. So, okay, what do you think the most important elements are to running a successful business? You've been in this business now for what, 21 years, do you say?
Yeah.
So what would you say the most important elements are to making sure you run a successful one?
Knowing your business and knowing your figures.
Yeah. Knowing your numbers is pretty important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I learned that one the hard way.
Yeah. That's one area that whether you're a recruitment company, an accountancy firm, a landscape business, if you don't know your numbers and you don't understand the numbers, then how do you know whether you're winning or losing, whether you're making a profit or whether you're not, whether decisions are going to be good or not? And I think that one thing I think to really highlight for anyone listening, you know, in any business, understanding your numbers is crucial, because if you don't, then you can go out of business. Great at what you do, but you need to be very good at knowing your numbers. And people shy away from that. I always find that people are sort of scared of it because they don't understand it, and therefore, you know, not necessarily making the right decisions, the best decisions for the business. Okay, so what would you say the biggest mistakes you've made, or the lessons you've learned in your years of being in business?
Right. I think the first one was letting somebody else run my business, figures wise. And trusting them to get on with it and trusting them to do. I think that was probably the biggest lesson that I've learned. You know, I thought, well, I'm good at the people side, I'm good at that thing, so yes. And I feel that I run my business better now that I have an understanding of what it all looks like from that side of thing. I think I run my business better now than I ever did. I just wish we had the Australians and the New Zealanders back, so I could help more people out more easily, more quickly. But there we go. So that one. What else have I learned? Okay, if you don't know what to do, don't do anything.
Right.
Be patient. Be patient.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we've all recruited in haste.
Yeah.
You know, you're so desperate, so don't panic. Because sometimes the right answers come to you if you don't panic.
Yeah, be a bit more patient and don't recruit to the bad bunch. Take your time a little bit. Okay, what else? What other challenges have you had? What other lessons have you learned?
Okay. I think, well, having survived couple of having survived the pandemic, having survived the complete, you know, we lost all the Antipodeans, you know, post 2010. I think the biggest lesson is just recruiting for attitude and training people. That's more important. As a small business, I can't compete with what high street recruitment pays, so I have to look for people who have a genuine interest in what we're doing and who have a genuine interest in people, because we have to deal with all sorts of different people, you know, from and particularly as we dealt with the European market. You have to be very patient and you have to be a people's person. I think that's probably the most important thing. Resilience.
Resilience. I think everyone who's been in business has to become bulletproof, don't they? Because there's so many ups and downs, so many challenges that you face along the way, whether you're a recruitment company or a landscape industry. There's always ups and downs. It's a roller coaster of emotions, isn't it? So it's important to get a tough skin. And that's why, if it was easy, everyone would do it, wouldn't it? But it's not easy. And the difference between successful people and the unsuccessful people is how you respond in those times of crisis, and how you respond, what your attitude and mindset is.
I think in terms of what we're talking about today, it's knowing when to downsize, knowing when to upsize, and I'm kind of at one of those perfect moments again, where I lost a full-time member of staff, and I'm thinking we're still recovering from loss of revenue from the pandemic. I could do, this is an opportunity to reduce my overheads, but it's balancing whether that's the right decision without putting too much pressure on the other staff and without being able to deliver the kind of service that I want us to deliver. And I think, there's a lot more difficulties that, we're having to get back through, particularly for non-land-based people. The whole running of a business remotely and getting back to less remote working has been quite challenging as well. So I need more bodies on the ground.
Yeah, it is a balancing act. It's a timing thing, isn't it, really? Making sure you're making the right decision at the right time. I suppose if you know your numbers and you can maybe look back historically and you can sort of plan ahead and maybe put some assumptions in there, you can sort of make some well thought out decisions and actions, as opposed to just sort of, keeping your fingers.
Yeah. I mean, with the exception of 2020 and the start of the pandemic, there's sort of a certain amount of time that I can rely upon, and that's sort of March, but April, May, and June, and that's where I have to make my money. And I know, no matter what happens, apart from pandemics, that's when I've got to be geared up, and that's what I've got to make my money to see us through the rest of the year.
So you've got to have enough resource in place for that part of the year, which is traditionally generally going to be very, very busy. Obviously, that was the worst possible timing, then, wasn't it, for you and COVID last time? In March. When you're doing yourself up for it, and then you have to sort of lock down.
It was a bit like taking the plug out of the bath. We went from sort of healthy number to virtually zero overnight. It was quite frightening for a while.
Yeah. So what if you think about the positive stuff now then? So what would you say? What have the most rewarding parts been for you in running a business?
It's having really good clients, really good customers, people that I can pick up the phone to and say, look, I've got this person, they want it's that customer relationship, and the relationship with my team has been very, very important. We're certainly more like family than we are just co-workers. That's very, very rewarding. It's really looking back and thinking there are so many clients that I still deal with that I've been dealing with now for 21 years, and that's very satisfying.
That says it all, doesn't it? So I think if you genuinely care about people, and being a recruitment company, you've got to like people, you've got to enjoy communicating with people and getting on with people and doing a good job. So you want to be doing the best job for your clients, the best job for your candidates, and being the best boss to your team. So really just making sure that everyone's happy. Yeah. If everyone's happy, they're going to do a good job, aren't they? As long as they're in the right position and the right company. Yeah. So that's rewarding, isn't it? So you really like helping people. So just as well you are, isn't it, really? So, and to have some of the same clients for 21 years says absolutely everything, doesn't it? Yeah. So what advice would you have then if someone who's a bit stuck in their business at the moment wants to expand but don't really know what those first steps are to take? What kind of advice would you give to people?
I think you have to look at where the pressures are in the business, so that you make the right decision in how. It's a balancing act between knowing how much business there is that you're not able to deal with, and bringing people in without watering down the service. It's about not watering down the service that you're giving. So you have to think about it, and you have to look at the numbers, and you have to be certain what direction you're going in.
Yeah. So knowing your numbers and having a plan, having a roadmap.
Having a plan. Yeah.
Yeah. And companies don't tend to have a business plan. They work day to day, week to week, and don't actually have like a 3-year plan, a 1-year plan, a 90-day plan, and then what we're going to do strategically for the business, instead of just doing, week after week after week, just doing what they do as a company. It needs to have a bit more of a strategic.
But I think you also have to be prepared to change your plan, because you can put a plan in action, and adaptability is one of the things when you're running a business. You have to be able to see, okay, that plan is not working as well as I hoped it would, and be able to tweak it.
Yeah, you know what we always say to our clients is, if you stick to a plan rigidly, it's not going to work. You're not going to have great results, because there's so many other things that can come in, like COVID, for example. You needed to change your plan there at the start of last year, or the back end of that quarter, the first quarter, because you need to be able to be flexible, and you have to adapt to it. But if you stick to your plan to the letter, you're not going to necessarily have the best quarter, because you need to keep an open mind with other things that happen, and think, actually, well, that's now become a priority. Let's move that one forward to maybe, or back to next quarter, and because this is going to be more beneficial to us.
I think you've probably used the right word there, Nick. I think that is prioritization is a thing. It's my website needs attention, but at the moment I need to prioritize actually finding people for my clients.
Yeah.
It's all very well. Yeah, it's all very well having a whizzy website, but if you're not filling the jobs that the clients are giving you, then A, they're not happy, and B, you're not making money.
That's right. And if you're not making sales, then there's no business, is there? Well, not for much, not for long anyway. Very good. Very good. So, that's. I think we've got one final question for you then. If there was just one golden nugget you could give to anybody in any industry, specifically, I suppose, for the purpose of this, in landscaping industry as an industry, not landscapers. It could be anyone in the horticulture industry. What would you say that would be? If you had one piece of advice to grow a successful business, what would it be?
Oh, it's difficult to pin it down to one. I think it's knowing your figures. It's knowing your figures. That's the biggest lesson I've had to learn. Trusting your instincts. I knew. I'm sure that I realised that I didn't have enough control, and I didn't ask enough questions about the figures. Yeah.
Why was that? Do you think? Well, do you tell me why did you feel like that?
Because I thought I wasn't any good at it. That's the honest answer.
I didn't have the knowledge.
It's a knowledge-based thing, and I did English and European literature at university. So in my mind, that's always been, the weakness in my armor, so to speak, is understanding figures. Yeah. But once you do, it's you're much more in control. It's much more your business.
It's so good. I think people avoid figures because they're scared. But once, it's like anything in life. If you don't know how to do something and you learn how to do it, then you think, oh, that's easy. But things are only difficult and confusing when we don't know how to do them. We learn how to do them. We think, oh, that's all right now. But really, as business owners, you need to learn to love numbers, because once you do, like you say there, you're in control. And if you don't know your numbers, you're out of control and you're very vulnerable and your business is at risk. So having that, and I think the other word you said there, which is instinct, and the gut instinct, having that gut instinct, that just that feeling. I think sometimes you've got to listen to your gut as well as your numbers. And I think you can't take that for granted, that natural sort of gut instinct you have for a situation. And if there's something not quite right, it's probably not quite right.
Completely.
And the numbers will probably back that up. So I think finance, knowing your numbers, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know whether you're making a profit or whether you're making a loss every month, you're not going to be in business anyway. So I'm pleased you said that, because that's one of the most important areas, obviously, of running a business.
Yeah.
Great. I think that's everything for today then, Marian. It's been lovely talking to you. How would people get in touch with you? If anyone needs to get in touch with you, how do they contact you? What's the best way?
The easiest thing to do is to contact me directly by email or by phone. But email is probably the simplest. And it's Marian, Marian, at freshhawkedcareers.com.
Wonderful. Well, there we go. Let's hope people have found this useful. I hope they choose
Hope so.
Because knowing your numbers and getting the right people on the bus, probably the most important things you could ever do in running a business. And obviously, someone like yourself genuinely cares for people and for your clients, and to get in the right match of candidate and job and company. That's what you do, and you get that right, and you get the numbers right, you won't go far wrong. So, wonderful. Thanks for your time today, Marian. It was
pleasure. Thank you, Nick.
And I'll catch you soon. Take care.
Yeah, we'll do. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast. To get in touch and see how we can help you with your business, by emailing nick@nickruddle.com.